Ed Gein was born in La Crosse County, Wisconsin on August 27, 1906. His father, George, and his mother, Augusta, also gave birth to his older brother, Henry Gein. Throughout the Gein's life, Augusta despised her husband, an alcoholic who was unable to keep a job. He had worked at various times as a carpenter, tanner, and insurance salesman. He also owned a local grocery shop for a few years, but later sold the business, and the family left the city to live in isolation on a farm in the town of Plainfield in Waushara County, Wisconsin, which became the Gein family's permanent residence. Augusta took advantage of the farm's isolation by turning away outsiders who could have influenced her sons. Edward left the farm only to attend school, and outside of school, he spent most of his time doing chores on the farm. Augusta was fervently religious and nominally Lutheran. She preached to her boys about the innate immorality of the world, the evil of drinking, and her belief that all women, except herself, were naturally prostitutes and instruments of the devil. She even reserved time every afternoon to read to them from the Bible, usually selecting graphic verses from the Old Testament concerning death, murder, and divine retribution. Ed was shy, and classmates and teachers remembered him as having strange mannerisms, such as seemingly random laughter, as if he were laughing at his own personal jokes. To make matters worse, his mom punished him whenever he tried to make friends. Despite his poor social development, he did fairly well in school, particularly in reading. Due to Augusta's isolation, Henry and Ed often had little contact with people. On April 1, 1940, Ed's father, George, died of heart failure, caused by his alcoholism. He was 66 years old. From that point on, Henry and Ed began doing odd jobs around town to help cover living expenses. The brothers were generally considered reliable and honest by residents of the community. While both worked as handymen, Ed also frequently babysat for neighbors. He enjoyed babysitting, seeming to relate more easily to children than adults. Ed Gein's first suspected crime was on May 16, 1944. His brother Henry and himself were burning away vegetation on the property when the fire got out of control. The local fire department showed up, and by the end of the day, the fire was extinguished. Later that evening, Ed reported his brother missing. As a search party went around town searching for Henry, his body was later found lying face down. Apparently, he had been dead for some time, and it appeared that the cause of death was heart failure. It was later reported in Harold Schechter's biography of Gein, Deviant, that Henry had bruises on his head. The police dismissed the possibility of foul play, and the county coroner later officially listed asphyxiation as the cause of death. The authorities accepted the accident theory, but no official investigation was conducted, and an autopsy was not performed. On December 29, 1945, at the age of 67, Ed Gein's mother died. Ed was devastated by her death, and in the words of Harold Schechter, he had lost his only friend and one true love, and he was absolutely alone in the world. Immediately following his mother's death, there was a huge personality change in Ed Gein. He boarded up rooms used by his mother, including the upstairs, downstairs parlor, and living room, leaving them untouched, while the rest of the house became increasingly messy, and these rooms remained pristine. Gein lived thereafter in a small room next to the kitchen. Around this time, he became interested in reading death cult magazines and adventure stories, particularly those involving cannibals or Nazi atrocities. Between 1947 and 1952, Gein made as many as 40 nocturnal visits to 3 local graveyards to exhume recently buried bodies, while he was in a daze-like state. On about 30 of those visits, he said he came out of the daze while in the cemetery, left the grave in good order, and returned home empty-handed. On the other occasions, he dug up the graves of recently buried middle-aged women he thought resembled his mother and took the bodies home, where he tanned their skins to make his paraphernalia. Gein's goal was to create a woman suit which resembled his mother, so he could quote-unquote literally crawl into her skin. On November 16, 1957, Plainfield hardware store owner Bernice Worden disappeared. A Plainfield resident reported that the hardware store's truck had been driven out from the rear of the building around 9:30 a.m. The hardware store was closed the entire day. Some area residents believed that this was because of the deer hunting season. Bernice Worden's son, Deputy Sheriff Frank Worden, entered the store around 5 p.m. to find the store's cash register open and bloodstains on the floor. Frank Worden told investigators that Ed Gein had been in the store the evening before his mother's disappearance, and that he would return the next morning for a gallon of antifreeze. A sales slip for a gallon of antifreeze was the last receipt written by Worden on the morning she disappeared. On the evening of the same day, Gein was arrested at a West Plainfield grocery store, and the Waushara County Sheriff's Department searched the Gein farm. A Waushara County Sheriff's deputy discovered Worden's decapitated body in a shed on Gein's property, hung upside down by her legs with a crossbar at her ankles and ropes at her waists. The torso was dressed out like a deer. She had been shot with a .22 caliber rifle, and the mutilations were made after her death. Searching the Gein house, authorities found whole human bones and fragments, a wastebasket made of human skin covering several chair seats, skulls on his bedposts, female skulls, some with the tops sawn off, bowls made from human skulls, a corset made from a female torso skinned from shoulders to waist, leggings made from human leg skin, masks made from the skin of female heads, Mary Hogan's face mask in a paper bag, Mary Hogan's skull in a box, Bernice Worden's entire head in a burlap sack, Bernice Worden's heart in a plastic bag in front of Gein's pot-bellied stove, 9 vulvae in a shoebox, a young girl's dressed in the vulvas of 2 females judged to have been about 15 years old, a belt made from female human nipples, 4 noses, a pair of lips on a window shade drawstring, a lampshade made from the skin of a human face, and fingernails from female fingers. Gein was tried for homicide of 2 or more victims and necrophilia in 1968 and sentenced to life imprisonment. He was later found not guilty due to insanity and acquitted of the charges and sent to a mental hospital where he spent the rest of his life. On July 26, 1984, Gein died of respiratory and heart failure due to cancer in Goodland Hall at the Mendota Mental Health Institute. His gravesite in the Plainfield Cemetery was frequently vandalized over the years. Souvenir seekers chipped off pieces of his gravestone before the bulk of it was stolen in 2000. Although Ed Gein may not have had many victims as a killer, the crimes he committed and the things he did will never be forgotten. He will always be one of the most notorious serial killers today.